There's so much to talk about this morning. So I was going to talk about two different things that seem completely unrelated, but I'm going to tie them together. One is the Chapter 11 bankruptcy that Regis Corporation is going through. That's the co-working or work-sharing people. They have a big office in Suffern, and that company has put 90 locations into Chapter 11 in the last couple of months. The thing I want to point out is that, at least for now, it seems that the Suffern location is safe and in good shape. And part of the reason for that is that it is mostly the urban locations that the company is closing down. What they say they have more confidence in are the suburban locations. And the reason for that is because of COVID and because of the fear of being in crowded urban centers, the company believes that clients are still going to want to work in suburban offices that are closer to home rather than going into the city and using public transportation and getting in elevators and all of that. So it's interesting to watch this sort of inverse scenario where you've got a very large company that is, like I said, that is placing many of its locations into Chapter 11 bankruptcy, but for now the Suffern location at 400 Rella Boulevard appears to be safe. We will see, what happens with co-working. I think, part of why they're probably in good shape is because they have separate, their offices are separate. They have 57 private offices. I think that the co-working spaces that are more open, where people come and sit around large tables and have laptops maybe geared toward the millennials, those might have to rethink how they partition their spaces. But anyway, that's one story.
What is the name of this place again? I missed when you said the name of it.
Yeah, it's Regis, Regis. R-E-G-U-S.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're talking about they. Maybe I missed something. They manufacture paper. They used to anyway. No, or no, I'm thinking of Saint. All right, now I can unconfuse myself.
This is a company that is one of the main. You've heard of the company WeWork, right? They're the major brand.
Yeah.
For co-working. Well, Regis is also a very major brand. It may not have the same kind of name recognition as WeWork, but they're a very large company with, I think, 1,000 offices.
Okay, all right.
And they happen to have one here in Suffern. Where I was heading with this is, the pandemic has thrown the world into chaos. We know that, but in some ways, there are impacts on suburbia and the suburban market, and specifically Rockland County, that are interesting to watch and are trends that I would say to stick a pin in. One is, as I just said, that co-working might have an edge here in the suburbs as a result of people being, more skittish about working in the city. And similarly, although a totally different story that we wrote, the opportunity for housing, the demand for housing also seems to be on the rise here in the suburbs. So last week we also reported on, you might recall over at Nanuet, there was a company called Azar, and they had some commercial buildings. They were there for decades. Well, they've raised those buildings now. If you go by there, you will see that they're just a pile of rubble. And those buildings are in the location that's been slated for Nanuet's transit-oriented development, which is supposed to transform that whole area around the transit station and around Main Street in Nanuet into a housing, a multi-family housing concentration with light retail on the ground floor. So those buildings had been sitting there for a long time, and yes, they were in bad shape and dilapidated and condemned. But I would proffer to say that the rubble on the floor indicates that the Cohn family, which owns those 4 acres, might finally be moving toward some sort of a sale or a development deal, because that land is poised for multifamily housing. And here again, I'm talking thematically about how the pandemic, is accelerating certain things or changing certain things. The Clarkstown voted to rezone this area about a year ago or so, and I've been watching to see, is there any demand? Is there any activity there? And it seems that what the pandemic may have done is to kick into gear all the, for example, Pearl River has been talking about a TOD as well around their train station, and Nanuet, and we see this boom we've been writing about in Nyack. And so I think that, in many ways we see that the pandemic has taken down a lot of small businesses, but at the same time it seems that if you look at housing and if you look at possibly co-working, there are ways in which the trend is moving in a positive direction for Rockland County. So
now this place you talked about, it's in Nanuet.
Right. It used to be a company called Azar, A-Z-A-R, and they sold...
So it was zoned for commercial. I'm getting mixed up. I thought the way you're talking about it was a private property.
Yeah.
Residential.
Yeah. Well, so what happened last June was that the town of Clarkstown rezoned 37 acres right in and around the area of the Prospect Avenue and the train station. And those 37 acres were largely to become a development of, well, for now it's capped at 500 housing units. And the idea is to get rid of the industrial tenants over there, with the industrial activity over there, and to change that up into housing so that it can utilize the train station and do a walkable community in and around Main Street, and it even connects to the shops at Nanuet and possibly even to whatever goes on the Grace Baptist Church site. So there is this vision to really transform that part of Nanuet. And,
what is in the Grace Baptist Church again? What's there?
Well, nothing right now. The Clarkstown bought it, and there's discussions about what to do with that building and whether to raise the parsonage and possibly put up some housing. But it all runs sort of in the same area, and it all puts into question, how Nanuet can be transformed in over the next several years. And I'm just saying that having seen that the Cohn family finally knocked down this building, yes, the building was old, dilapidated, falling down, but I would suggest that this signals that they are possibly moving forward to start developing that site, and I think that that's an important starting point for the Nanuet TOD, transit-oriented development. So a lot of things to watch, a lot of things going on that aren't obvious to us, but that's why we're here.
Okay, you're here with the Rockland Business Journal. It's a strictly online publication, updated quite regularly. under rcbizjournal.com.
And I'd like to remind people that local journalism is super important, and to pop on our site and become a member for $50 a year, just to support journalism and to benefit from advertising incentives. So rcbizjournal.com, sign on and become a member.
Thank you much.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, Tina, we'll talk to you next week.